Good evening, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Helotes City Council. It's August 8th, 2019, and we're underway at 7 p.m. Starting our agenda, we have our invocation. Tonight, Councilmember Blue will do the invocation, and then we'll follow that with the pledge to the American and Texas flag. So if you'd please stand for the invocation and pledges.
Heavenly Father, we gather here tonight to do our city's business, and we ask for your presence and guidance as we do so. We are truly blessed to live in such a wonderful community, state, and nation. We pray that you will be comforting to the family and friends of those who were injured or killed in the recent shootings in Ohio as well as in Texas. We ask for your protection for all of our first responders and all of our city employees and volunteers as well. Keep them safe in their daily duties and their daily lives. These things we ask in your blessed name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, next up we have, under recognition, a presentation by the National Weather Service to recognize Helotes as a storm-ready community in Bexar County. And as I understand it, we're the first suburban city to receive this designation. And are you going to say a few words? We can get you a hand mic if you want to turn around and face the audience. That's fine. Why don't you go ahead?
Does this work? Yeah. Okay.
Just introduce yourself and feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Joe Ariano. I'm the meteorologist in charge of the National Weather Service, Austin, San Antonio, located in New Braunfels, Texas. As you know, Americans live in the most severe weather-prone country in the world. Each year we have about 10,000 violent thunderstorms, 1,000 tornadoes, and 6 deadly hurricanes. 2 of those would usually make landfall. 98% of all presidentially declared disasters are weather-related, causing over 500 deaths each year, 5,000 injuries, and almost $15 billion in damages. To help guard against these ravages from Mother Nature, the National Weather Service produced and formed the Storm Ready program. The Storm Ready program arms American communities with the communication and safety skills needed to protect lives and property before and during severe weather. It has several parts. The community has to have a 24-hour EOC where they can communicate with us and with the public. Multiple ways of receiving warnings and disseminating those warnings. Ability to monitor the weather and promote awareness and readiness. Storm-ready communities help arm communities with better safety programs. They are better prepared to save lives from severe weather through better planning, education, and awareness. Now, no community is storm-proof, but Storm Ready can help communities to better be prepared to save lives. On behalf of the South Central Texas Storm Ready Advisory Board and the National Weather Service, I would like to congratulate the City of Helotes on becoming a Storm Ready community. By achieving this recognition, it is a clear indication of the vision and commitment of the Helotes community leaders to ensure the citizens and visitors of Helotes are as safe as possible from severe weather.
Mr. Moreland and Scott. One note, the recognition is for 3 years, and after 3 years, we'll revisit the application and we'll update and do that. So with that, we'd present a certificate and also a street sign, a storm-ready street sign that will present to the city, and then additional signs can be made as well. So again, thank you for going through the process.
So we have to have all our storms in the next 3 years.
Let's start with Voya storm. Let's do that. And there's a nice street sign as well. So, here, why don't you guys?
Can y'all get, so we
3 steps right. Or left.
Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
And just have a little further recognition, Skylar Day is one of our dispatchers, and she's the Assistant Emergency Management Coordinator for the city. Started all of this and has worked with the National Weather Service. They went over to New Braunfels and toured the center, and the Weather Service came over here and did the inspections and everything that was required. And then Scott Moreland, our fire chief, he's actually the Emergency Management Coordinator, and he supervises Skylar, so it's kind of a team effort there. So again, congratulations, guys, we appreciate it, and we'll coordinate where to hang you at.
Just real quick, I actually want to thank Angela, Justin, and Josh Meir, as well as Rick, because without them, I would have no idea where any of our stuff was. So I learned a lot through this process also.
Good.
They were awesome.
Scott, want to say anything?
All the credit goes to Skylar. She basically, with several of the programs we're still working on and this one, she comes and asks, can I? And I said yes, and sign whatever needs to be signed. So, there's very little thought process in it for me.
And that's been a great process, is kind of building those relationships, not only between you, but then also with the Weather Service. And that's what the Storm Ready recognition does. It continues that relationship throughout the years, because there are some things that we have to keep doing year after year, exercises and weather trainings, et cetera, for the community. So look for that. It doesn't just stop right now. It continues on for the next several years. Again, appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You know, somehow, one way or another, you're here.
Another part of that is that we maintain a 24/7, 365 weather station. And earlier this year, we received one, purchased one, and it's on the fire station. And you can go to our website at visithelotus.com or helotus-tx.com. And in the upper right corner of the homepage, you'll see a little cloud with the sun behind it, and you can click on that. And anytime you can find out the rainfall accumulation, temperature, humidity, wind speeds, all of that information is there on the website, and that's real time. So it's pretty interesting if you get excited about the weather. Okay, next up, we have a public hearing, which is item number 3 on our agenda. In this public hearing, we will open at 7:08. And it is to give all interested persons the right to appear and be heard on a request from city staff to amend Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 18, Building and Building Regulations, and Chapter 98, Zoning, amending building permit expiration and extension terms and required inspections, and requiring a certificate of occupancy for residential structures. Rick, do we have anybody? Nobody signed up to speak to this public hearing, so we will close the hearing at 7:09. Any citizens to be heard? Then we will go to the consent agenda. And for anyone who's not familiar with our type of a meeting, a consent agenda is a grouping of multiple numbers of items that the staff and I consider to be fairly routine city business. And our goal is to have one motion and 1 second to approve the consent agenda items. However, if a council member has a question that we can answer fairly quickly, that will be addressed. Or if they want to pull an item for full discussion, it'll be pulled and dropped down into the individual items to be discussed. So that being said, our consent agenda tonight consists of items 5 through 7. So I'd ask if there are any questions or requests to pull an item. None being heard, I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 5 through 7.
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve consent agenda items 5 through 7.
We have a motion from Byes. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Blue. So with a motion and a second, no discussion required, we'll call the question. All in favor of approving consent agenda items 5 through 7, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to items for individual consideration, item number 8. And this is discussion of and action on an ordinance amending Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 18, Building and Building Regulations by amending building permit expiration and extension terms and required inspections and requiring a certificate of occupancy for residential structures. So that being said, do we have a motion and a second to open for discussion and action?
Mayor, I'd move we open item number 8 for individual consideration and a vote.
We have a motion from Meadows. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Byes. Jim, it's your motion, so you're up first.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry.
I strongly support this particular action. I know it's been on the agenda. We've already had discussion about it for consideration. The citywide, I think that it's time that we were able to put things on a time limit and to have enforceability, as well as to create a true certificate of occupancy rather than just a final inspection. In our community where I live, we have experienced times where people just are basically just taking advantage of the process. And in the most egregious case, it was a 2.5-year process from the start of construction to a final inspection, and I still would consider the house having a certificate of occupancy. So I think the whole idea of this that staff came up with, and I've supported from day one, is that we actually allow this to go forward in its current state.
Okay. Bert?
I agree with Jim, but I just have a couple of questions. And it goes back to what the P and Z was asking council to maybe consider. The permit time regulation is now 9 months. Well, it says being changed to 9 months, but really the 271 days to me is 9 months.
Correct.
So, and they were asking about maybe going up to 12 months. I just would kind of, see what the rest of council feels about that. And then also, getting back to the ordinance itself, I did notice that it still says in the ordinance that we still need building permits for our ETJ, at least unless I'm reading it wrong. And we know now that we can't do that because the Texas Supreme Court said that we can't. So is that, I would like to know if that's going to be removed or if I'm just reading it wrong. It's section 18-1 and it's under B. And this other question that I have is another one P&Z was asking about, maybe some clarification on number 3 on the agenda item about E, when it says for the 5th permit extension and more 60 days plus some escalating fee structure. Shouldn't we just say 5th and more and 400%? Or what, I don't exactly know what they're asking, but do we need clarification on that? So,
Mayor, I can address the 18-1.
Go ahead.
18-1 isn't a part of this ordinance. This ordinance is just amending 18-2 and some other sections.
oh, okay, so but that's still something we need to do. I know it's not part of the agenda item.
Yeah, it's not part of the agenda item. We can do that. We opted just at that point, and that this gets into legal opinions.
all right.
But we haven't amended it yet. We can. We're not enforcing it within our ETJ. And with regard to the P&Z's comment about the 5th extension, I read it, and I have to be honest with you, to me, it's clear.
Okay.
So I don't know what.
I'm sorry.
Maybe Councilor Blue can address that.
Okay. Well, as long as it's clear to staff, if it comes to that point, hopefully it'll never come to that point, maybe it has, but just as long as it's clear to staff what the fee would be.
Yeah, I mean, at the 5th extension, it would clearly be 400% of the original fee. So I really don't know what they were talking about.
Do you have anything to say about maybe going to 12 months? Or is that
That's a
just?
policy decision, that's y'all's decision.
Yeah, that wouldn't be necessary. 9 is plenty.
Okay.
Most cities have a 9-month. I know Fair Oaks and some of the others do. And that's what we've always had. A competent builder, unless there's some extenuating circumstances by a lot of bad weather or something, but even with that, you can overcome and build
Okay.
a good-sized house in 9 months.
That was your
Yeah,
job, so
yeah.
I wasn't in that business, so if you feel like if everybody else feels like 9 months is enough.
30
I'll go with it.
years building houses, never took
Okay.
longer than about 7.
Bert, you know you can burn it down faster than build it.
Yeah, I did that too.
You can burn
Anyway.
it down faster than build it, so.
Yeah.
Okay, and then,
yeah.
Mayor, I had one other question. This is nothing to do with the agenda item either, and I thought we needed to reappoint the commission.
They're continuing on in their place until they're reappointed, and I haven't decided to reappoint them yet.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. And following up on Rick said, when I wrote this, or we wrote this, it was just, second extension's 100%, third's 200, then you go 300, and rather than continue and determine a stopping point somewhere, we just said anything after the 4th, because hopefully no one will have a 5th extension. It just says it'll continue on at that rate. And like Rick says, you got 1, 2, 3, it'll go 4, 5, whatever it takes. And this is just hopefully to give builders and owners an incentive to finish a house.
Yes, okay. I
Rather
was
than
just asking for what the P and Z wanted us to bring up.
Okay, Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I want to make sure to mention that. It has been mentioned. I am of the opinion that 9 months is adequate for the vast majority of homes that are going to be constructed in the city. And if we were not giving them the option to extend, then maybe we should go to 12 to make sure we cover everybody. But we have plenty of options on there. There was some confusion on planning and zoning about what this meant. It does look clear to me. Obviously, if it's clear to staff, that's the essence there. And so those are my 2 opinions. I completely concur with the rest of the ordinance.
Okay. Cynthia?
As I recall, we never had any penalty before, is that correct?
Yeah,
So-
they could get a 90-day extension without a fee. But people were abusing that. They weren't asking for extensions, and they were continuing on. And so we had a lot of problems. There was no way to really track them. Now we have a tracking system in place where Ernest and Rick keep up with these timeframes, and we notify the owner or the builder at least 30 days before the expiration of their permit if they need an extension to ask for it. That's how it'll work.
Okay. Yeah, because Councilmember Meadows mentioned the house going on for 2.5 years, and since we had no penalties, they were able just to continue to do that. And there was nothing in the ordinance that made them pay more or anything. So I understand that we do need to have a bite on this, some penalty. I too had, if 9 months is pretty standard in the industry, then, it was 9 months.
Yes.
So to begin with, it's just changing the days to the 9 months. Then I see no problem. It seems, I was just thinking about different types of houses and perhaps how long they would take. The house that I live in is 2,500 square feet. They told us it would take 4 months. It took 6 months. So I'm just thinking a much larger house, like the type that are in Iron Horse Canyon, the huge houses that are 4,000 square feet. You still believe that 9 months is sufficient?
Yep.
Okay.
Jim?
Just to reinforce, no, I'm obviously totally supportive. I think the whole idea that Cynthia brought up is that without teeth in the process, there's no way to enforce anything. And you could literally have somebody on temporary power for 3 years and basically not doing anything to finish their house, which it becomes onerous for their neighbors and for the rest of the community as far as the valuation. I think the other part about having a certificate of occupancy is the fact that it says this house is occupiable, not just that it has electrical inspection, which is primarily the final inspection. and it's hooked up to whatever utilities. So I think it's something it's timely, it's needed, and Cynthia, just to, a tract home, 4.5 months is basically the maximum that they're normally dealing with. You can build it in 56 days. A larger home, 6 months should be the norm, and if you have extenuating circumstances, it might go to 9, but I see no reason why it should go beyond that. And if they go beyond that, they do have a vehicle for making it happen. So I obviously support the motion.
Okay, Bert, anything else?
No, no,
Alex,
nothing further, thank you.
anything from you, Cynthia? Any
You know, I had
follow-up?
something a minute ago, but it's gone now, so I guess it's not important.
I can relate to that.
It's gone now, so.
Shall we wait a few seconds?
I'm fine.
Okay. And one thing to address that, we've done away with that TOPS inspection, which allowed them to get electricity before the house was finished.
Right.
And then we've added the certificate of occupancy, which is part of the final inspection. So the house has to be complete,
Exactly.
including some landscaping, the way this is worded,
And a four-season driveway and
everything.
Yep.
Yeah,
I do remember now.
okay.
If, when someone comes in for a building permit, the builder, will they explain this whole scenario to them? I mean, they'll know that they have 9 months, and then if they don't do it, these are the things that can happen.
I'm not going to say we're going to hold everybody's hand, but they do get this as
They'll
part of
have a
their
copy of
application.
this.
And the
And hopefully
permit
they've
has-
read the ordinances.
Permit has an expiration date on the
Yeah,
permit.
yeah, we're adding the expiration date now. It didn't have it before. You had to actually physically figure 271 days. Now
Right.
it's just 9 months. So if it's the 1st of December, then it would be the 1st of, September, October.
Okay.
So it simplifies it for staff, and it includes the inspections. I would like to add, the one you're talking about is not the only one. There was one at Lazy J and 7L Trail that was over 2 years. And then we have several in Iron Horse that have been pushing 2 years. And some of them had special circumstances, but nothing that should have held up construction that long. And none of them had asked for extensions. We just happened to find them because neighbors started complaining typically.
Yeah.
Okay, no further discussion being necessary. We'll call the question. All in favor of approving the ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next is item number 9. Discussion of an action on a request by Stanley and Phyllis Goodson for approval of a conceptual design plan for Helotes Retail Center. And this is right up across from, across Bandera Road from basically Young Brothers, or just up from Jupi Mills. And they've done a great job of using the property as far as I can tell, but we'll get into this for asking for a motion for discussion and action on this item number 9, please.
Mayor, make a motion to discuss and take action on 9.
We have a motion from Byes, we have a second.
I'll second that.
Second from Blue. Okay, once again, Bert, you're up.
Okay, I really like the concept that I'm looking at here. It's a really cool-looking building. And I agree with P and Z's recommendation on approval of the conceptual design plan, including the site plan, building plan, and exterior lighting for the Helotes Retail Center. It's really a cool-looking building, and I think it's something that's going to be a great addition to Helotes.
Okay, and just as a bit of information, they did include a letter here in your packet that they will be bringing the sign plan at a later date for consideration and approval. Okay, Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely agree. I think that Planning and Zoning had a pretty good presentation made to them, and with the building materials were there, and I think they were duly impressed with the setup and the presentation. So I think it went well. I don't disagree with their recommendation. I completely concur. Only had one question, and during that presentation, there was a comment, and I just wanted to clarify. Maybe you know the answer. I know the owner or developer is here. The main building obviously is going to be retail. From the photos, it looks very clearly single-story. There's a small building in the back that's called owner's space. My understanding is the owner's going to office out of that. But in the presentation, it talked about a two-story building back there, and I'm just curious, is it two-story or one-story? I couldn't quite tell, and I didn't see any renditions of that particular building. So that being back up against the hill, I was just curious if it was going to be one or two-story.
Yeah, it was presented as two-story, and
Couldn't find that.
it's right here on the plan,
Okay.
showing a two-story.
Okay. Yeah, I have no objections. I think it's a wonderful development. Thank you.
Okay, Cynthia?
Yeah, I agree with all the comments. I was just wondering, do we know what retail is gonna be in there yet?
I don't believe they have any spaces leased.
How many spaces are in there for lease?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, that question came up at Planning and Zoning, and he said it could be anywhere from 1 to 6, depending on who comes first
Yeah.
and how much space they want.
How much space they want.
Okay.
Because it's just like some of the others, the Abizo Center going in, Helotes Crossing one down there. Dunkin' Donuts was the first one, but I don't know that they have any of the others leased out. But depending on what business, they might take 2 spaces. But I think it's laid out, the way I saw it, for about 6. Oh, well, they're numbered.
Maximum.
Yeah, 1 through 6. So the maximum would be 6, plus the owner's occupancy of that outbuilding.
Very nice.
Anything else? Jim?
Very quickly, I support the P and Z's recommendation. So I support the motion. I like what they've done elevationally. It's something, it's different. There's a quality associated with it.
It is nice.
So therefore, I support the motion.
Okay. Bert, any follow-up?
No, sir.
Alex, anything?
Sure,
Cynthia, nothing? Okay, no further discussion being required. We'll call the question. All in favor of approval of the plans, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay, item number 10, we have discussion of an action on a resolution approving the submission of a Safe Routes to School Infrastructure Funding Grant application for the construction of sidewalks along Gulm, Braun, Iron Horse Way, Antonio Drive, Riggs, and Old FM 1560 roads. And this is something that Susan and Josh have been working on for quite some time. We've met with TxDOT, or they have. I've been in on one of those meetings, and it's a fairly large grant request, but I understand that we can sectionalize it to give us a better chance at maybe some of it, if not all of it. So we'll open with a motion and a second for discussion and action, and if you have any questions, Josh is here and can address those. So a motion and a second.
Mayor, I make a motion to discuss and take action on 10.
A motion from Byes, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Blue.
Meadows.
Oh, you did it? Oh, okay. From Meadows?
Not that I wouldn't have, but he was just quicker.
Okay, so we have a motion from Byes and a second from Meadows. And again, they put the whole ball of wax in here, so you know everything that they know if you've read it. And so we'll open it up. Bert, it's your motion, so you're up first. Any discussion or questions for our esteemed Public Works Supervisor here?
Well, I mean, they could do this all, the Public Works crew could do all this themselves, couldn't they?
Oh, sure. They might, we may have to give them an extension of past the 9 months.
No, you brought up, I mean, everything's in there. I'm all for it, of course. It'd be wonderful if we get the money. Does anybody know about how much money we're asking for?
It's in there. What'd it come out to, the final one?
I didn't find
8?
It's almost 6 million.
6 million?
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
It's a lot of sidewalks. It's in the application.
5,000 of 10,000.
Okay.
It's in there
This is longer
somewhere.
than the budget.
Okay, I guess I need better glasses, but anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm all for it.
Okay. Jim?
My only comment is, in one of my other lives, I do substitute teach in that area, in the grade school areas, and there's kids all over that area trying to get back and forth, and I'm totally supportive of making sure we have a safe walkway for getting them to and fro.
Well, hopefully we'll be awarded some of it, if not all of it. Alex?
I'm all in favor of this. Thank you.
Okay. Cynthia?
Who would guess that a sidewalk would, sidewalks would cost $6 million?
A lot of sidewalks.
Seriously, but they're necessary, and I think it's a great.
You have to remember that this being a grant and state and I guess federal money involved, the extra engineering and all the other stuff probably doubles the cost
Yeah,
by the time you're done. And that's just the way these kinds of things work.
Yeah, and I'm definitely for this. This is a
Okay, Bert, any follow-up?
No, sir.
No? Alex, you're good? Cynthia? Okay, then we will call the question to approve submitting the resolution and pursue this Safe Routes to School money. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay, next up, for those of you that aren't familiar with this time of year, we're in our budget season. Our fiscal year runs from October 1 of each year to September 30th of the following year. And so this is typically the way our government is set up. The mayor is the budget officer for the city, and I, along with staff, prepare the budget, and from tonight forward, it will be the council's budget. And so I'm going to cover a few things that we are highlighting and recommendations we're asking council to consider. And so this is their first look at their notebooks, kind of like, as Jim said, Christmas in August. You got them both there. And as usual, we have a budget message at the beginning, so you can follow along. It's under section 2, I believe, or A, I guess it would be, in this particular notebook. The budget message. And I'm just going to read a few things. You don't need to follow along. But something very strange happened this year that Rick was actually, I don't know if shocked is the right word, but relieved. This is the first year since we've been operating the city that we've actually started the budget process in the black, a surplus. Typically, when we start and run the first numbers of everybody's wants and needs and the other things that are part of our daily operational function, we start out anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million in the hole, and then have to start working magic to balance the budget. But this time, as you'll see as we get into the presentation, as Rick does, the general fund budget, as presented tonight, is balanced, and we anticipate revenues exceeding expenditures by approximately $150,000. And as long as the revenues exceed expenses, it's considered a balanced budget. But essentially, the proposed fiscal year ending 2020 municipal budgets allow the city to maintain the current level of municipal services to our citizens while managing municipal growth and spending. It is important to remember that the revenues and expenses presented to you tonight will be in a state of flux. And we do this every year. And what we're meaning by a state of flux, and you may recall from previous years, is the numbers that you have tonight will change at the subsequent meetings simply because we will continue receiving revenue from various sources and we will continue paying the bills. And so our expenses and revenues will change from this point forward to the end of the fiscal year. And that's what we basically mean by that. So the numbers are valid tonight, but just keep in mind that they will change at each meeting. Any substantial changes, we will certainly highlight and bring to your attention, but we don't anticipate anything other than our normal trend going toward, as you'll see in the budget, the year-end expectation or estimate is what we're shooting for. And that also gives us a beginning point for next year's budget. We are proposing no additions to city staffing this year. Referencing the increase in the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, between April 2018 and 2019, April 2019. This budget includes a citywide total increase of 5% for employees' salaries, instead of the typical 3% we've done in years past. This consists of 1.8% that matches the CPI adjustment, and a 1.2% is for the typical merit increase for the 3% that we typically do. However, looking at the numbers and projecting forward, we discussed this and decided that we would propose an extra 2% for you to approve this year, bringing our salary projections up 5%. And each budget cycle, the reason for this, each budget cycle, we face an inherent challenge of addressing salaries and the adjustments of salaries. I need my light. And I need to clean my glasses, just a second. Got to make this right. So each budget cycle, we face the inherent challenge of addressing salary adjustments, keeping our employees' salaries competitive with other municipalities. We always want to keep that in mind because we are competing with other municipalities, not only in the ACOG region and Bexar County, but statewide and sometimes even nationwide. We also want to, at the same time, keep the overall cost of our salaries and benefits within acceptable limits within the budget. In the past, we have stressed the importance of keeping our salaries and benefits cost at or below 70% of our total anticipated revenues for each fiscal year. This, of course, then leaves a minimum of 30% of the anticipated revenues to take care of the daily operational needs required to enable us to provide exceptional quality of life services to our citizens and Helotes visitors. At this time, we are projecting revenues totaling $8,366,076 for the next fiscal year, and that includes a total salaries and benefits package valued at $4,807,807. And that gives us a percentage or ratio of salaries and benefits to revenue of 57.47. This is the lowest ratio of salaries and benefits to revenues we have had since we began tracking this data, and it's more in line with the recommended levels. As you may recall, in previous years, we've always been up around the 70% and battling not going over that 70% level. So we're down now where the majority of cities sit if we stay with this recommendation. It's important to note that our anticipated revenues shown above are the highest we've ever had also. We've made several assumptions pertaining to revenue projections. Historically, our projections have been conservative, and we have no reason to believe otherwise with this budget. It's important to remember that our investments in an equitable salary and benefits package today, whatever we do today, is a long-term commitment. And that commitment will compound annually, averaging at least 3% going forward. So we have to be cognizant, even though the numbers look good now, we're basing this on short-term anticipated projections. And so we don't want to overburden us long-term by going much higher than we are here until we can assure ourselves of these revenues being sustainable. So we recommend your approval of the 5% salary adjustment, especially with the decreased ratio of salaries and benefits to the revenue mentioned above. And the way this extra 2% is, actually it's going to be 3.2 over the CPI. We're going to meet with each department head, and it'll be up to each department head to take the lump sum given to their department based upon this 5%. To distribute that among the employees as they see fit, based upon performance, merit, that type of thing. So it'll be up to the department heads to be cognizant of what each employee is entitled to have as far as the salary increase. over and above the CPI adjustment of 1.8%. This budget allows also for investments in equipment, training, amenities, and community. Just a few things that Rick will highlight. We're planning on purchasing a new public works vehicle. We have one that's pretty well aged out, and then some new equipment. We're going to be converting the old ambulance chassis, most likely, to a truck that Public Works can use to maintain some of the traffic lights and the other school zone lights and those kinds of things where it's hard to reach them with a ladder. We're looking at doing a boom type attachment to the vehicle, so that'll make them be able to do that a little easier, and they'll be able to use that during the Christmas season when they're putting all the lights up down in Old Town, and we won't have to rent a lift as we have been up until now. We're also projecting a new animal control vehicle and some assorted equipment for that. Some dispatch center technology and equipment, court. We're being required to provide a specific type of fingerprinting equipment, which we are allowing for here. Police portable radios and bulletproof vests as typical. Police carport and security fencing. We've tried to do this before and just haven't found anyone we were satisfied to do the work, so we're going out for bids again. And we have 3 of our patrol vehicles in the fleet that are, 2 of them are over 100,000 miles and one's at 97. And as we've done in the past, that's our goal, is every 4 years, as they turn 100,000, we'll replace whichever ones they're doing. So we have 3 new Ford Explorer Police Interceptors in here. And then Rick will cover the other stuff. Sales and use tax collections have increased significantly over the last 5 years, allowing us to come even closer to reaching our goal of balancing sales and property taxes in an effort to improve the quality of life for all of our citizens. That said, property tax continues to be our largest single source of revenue. Council, as in the past, approved my recommendations to lower the property tax rate for 3 consecutive years in 2011, 2012, 2013. And we've kept the current rate since 2013 at 35 cents per $100 valuation for the 6 years since 2013. We did that mainly to be sure we were going to be maintaining a steady growth in our revenues and that we were able to keep the recommended level of reserves in our general fund. We expect to see 400 additional new homes completed in Brycewood subdivision over the next 3 to 5 years, and more new retail centers and standalone businesses being built along Bandera Road during that same time frame. These considerations are among some of the reasons I am recommending to you tonight that you approve decreasing our ad valorem property tax rate by 1/2 cent to 34.5 cents per $100 valuation with this budget. The budget you're receiving with this budget message reflects the decrease going from 35 cents per 100 to 34.5 cents per 100. And as I said before, as of now, the budget ceases to be the mayor's budget and it becomes your budget. And I'd just like to highlight a couple of things from our handbook for mayors and council members concerning budget. And that states that oftentimes, and this is a quote from the book, oftentimes the budget is approved and then dismissed by saying, now that that dreadful chore is behind us, we can get on with the fun part of the city's business. And I agree to that to a certain extent, but it does not really ring true on some levels. However, I see the budget as a serious project for us with an element of fun that comes from working with the numbers, bringing it to a point of balance, and then waiting to see the results and our level of success with our estimates. Because keep in mind, a budget is nothing more than an estimate of what we are projecting or anticipating revenues and expenses to be. So it's always a challenge toward the end of the year to see how close we come and whether we have to tighten the reins or have the latitude to do some things before the end of the budget year to take care of things that we hadn't done previous. So it's always interesting, and I will say, for just about every year I can remember, we're very close. We're generally within 1 to 3, sometimes 5% of our anticipated revenues and expenses. So overall, that's pretty good. It's also true that among all of the functions performed by the city council, budgeting is the most important. In its simplest definition, budgeting is a plan for utilizing the city's available funds during the fiscal year to accomplish the established goals and objectives we have for that fiscal year. It's kind of like a blueprint. It gives us a guide to go by through the year, and as we are exceeding or falling behind in any area, then we can look at those and make adjustments as necessary. And in conclusion, I ask that you accept this document and seriously consider the recommendations that I have made. And with that being presented to you tonight, your responsibility then is to ask us questions, us being Rick and me, make changes as you feel necessary after hopefully serious consideration as a group, and finally approve the budget as required the last meeting in September, which will be September 26th. So we'll have 2 more meetings before then, August 22nd and September 12th, where we will review the budget, discuss the budget, and then ask for your approval on September 26th. Okay. And with that, I will turn the stage over to Rick Schroeder, our city administrator, and I know he's been practicing all day on what he's going to tell you. And if you have any questions, Rick, it's your call. They can ask during your presentation or wait till later. So
can ask whenever, it's
just
fine.
fire away whenever you have a question of something that might need clarification. So Rick, take it away.
Okay, thank you, and good evening. I'm glad that the mayor did an intro, because what I want to say is, basically, I'm going to be taking you through the budget folder that's in front of you, or the budget packet that's in front of you. So some of this stuff is going to seem a little disjointed, because I'm having to start from the beginning and go all the way to the end, because I don't want you to flip back and forth in your budget binder. So the first thing I'm going to say is, in the front of y'all's packet, as usual, we do have a flash or a thumb drive that has all the department requests that we received to date. If there are any others, I don't think there's going to be, but I will email those out to council as we receive those. Okay, first thing I wanted to notate is on tab B, page 10. You'll notice here, this is the general fund balance that we've had from 2008 to 2018, so a 10-year period. You can see, essentially, you're sort of creating a baseline here between 2 million and 2.5. Well, in the last few years, we've been using some reserve funds to pay for some projects, and so one of the things that the mayor notated here was that we are budgeting within the general fund revenues exceeding expenditures by $150,000, and that's an effort to increase this general fund balance up to where we would like to see it, which is, again, between the 2 and the 2.5 million. This year's budget reserves, again, are $150,000 under the expenditures that we have. Looking at tax revenue here and the source, tax revenue by source in millions, you can see the increase in both property tax, which is the blue, and in the sales tax projections that we've had in the red. Back in 2008, you were at 2.17 million in property tax. Now we're looking at 3.5 million in property tax, and that's distributed between the general fund and the interest and sinking fund that we use to pay the debt service fund, or the debt service. Sales tax, we're looking at 3.1 million, or that was the case in 2018. So we're definitely making headway here in at least balancing property and sales tax. That is the ultimate goal, to have at least 30-30 split there, and so we're making progress. This is on page 14. The 2018 ad valorem tax rate, again, is the 0.35. The mayor has told you that we're proposing to lower it 0.5 cents to 0.345. That still is going to place us in the bottom quadrant of all of the municipalities that are within Bear County, and so we feel that we're in a good place from a property tax side. We're representing the citizens' wishes in the way of services, but we're also not charging them too much. So we feel confident about that.
Rick?
Yes.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt. How much do you think that's going to reduce our monies being brought in from property tax?
Every quarter, every point,
Every quarter of a percent,
every quarter of
25
a
basis
percent is
points.
about $23,000.
Yeah,
So it's nominal.
so total about 40,000. And that is calculated in the budget,
So
as I said.
total would be 40,000 if we adopted that property tax
The
rate?
.345, yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tab 2, again, still page 17. You'll notice here that we said that a rule of thumb for a minimum general fund balance is no less than 2 months. That's actually from the government, generally accepted governing practices for audits. So it's no less than 2 months. We believe that that's probably a little too low, cutting it too close for comfort. In 2018, the comprehensive annual financial report that we did showed that we had 3.7 months of average operating expenditures within the general fund. Again, reiterate, the $150,000 should increase that 3.7, hopefully to 4, maybe a little bit higher than that. Page 19. Page 19, and this is in tab D. This summarizes the debt service that we currently have and that we're currently paying. General obligation bonds, we don't have any general obligation bonds that we are paying. Those are the ones that the voters go out to and they actually vote to issue debt. We do have 2 certificate of obligation issuances, one in 2007 and one in 2015. The 2007, both of them are 20-year, so 2007 is going to be over in 2027. 2015, 20 years after that issuance. Tax notes, we do not have any tax notes at this time. The only other thing that you'll see within the interest and seeking funds when we get there is the litigation expenses that we have, and I'll go over what is outstanding at that point. Debt issuance limits, as of 2018, we had 9.7 or about $9.8 million in outstanding loans. Our total debt limit that we could issue, which we never would not be a good thing, would be $73 or $74 million in outstanding debt. Tab F, page 33. As the mayor said, we are not proposing any new hires in this budget cycle. The current year, we have 81 full-time equivalent employees. Full-time equivalent equals both full and part-time. And in proposed 2020, we're still at the 81 employees. You'll see here, this is broken down between administrative departments, police, and fire. Administrative departments have about 34 full-time equivalents. Police has 24, and the fire department has 23. Page 34 of tab F. This is the certification pays that we pay individual departments. Several things that changed this year. City Council, the uniform allowance for City Council, it was $150. We're proposing to increase that another $150 to $300. The shirts, as y'all know, since y'all purchase them and go to quite a few city events, they're not cheap. And so we believe $300 is more in line. We also added all other administrative employees not categorized below. So what that means is police, fire, public works, code enforcement, all of them get a $720 uniform allowance per year. Dispatch gets a uniform allowance of half of that, $360. All the other employees that we have that actually attend municipal functions on behalf of the city or other functions on behalf of the city, they do not currently receive a uniform allowance. And so we're proposing to add $150 a year for those employees. And that should buy 1 to 2 shirts for them to use at these various functions. The only other change is under Public Works. We have added commercial driver's license certification in here in the amount of $600. We have 1 employee right now that has a CDL, and we have two, correct? 2 vehicles that require a CDL to operate. And so that employee essentially has to bounce back and forth between those vehicles in order to drive them to stay in compliance with law. And so what we're trying to do is encourage employees to get their CDL. CDLs come with a lot of baggage because it's not just like a Class C driver's license where if you get a ticket, you pay it. It's really not a big deal. Class Cs, or excuse me, commercial driver's licenses, there's a whole nother ball of wax when you get tickets, either when you're driving a city vehicle or when you're driving your own personal vehicle. And so people, frankly, they don't want to get a CDL. So we're essentially increasing certification pay in the hopes that they do so that we have more operators. Page 37 of tab F.
Rick, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Didn't mean to interrupt you. Under the fire department, I don't see anything for additional bunker gear. Is the fire chief still here? Okay, because I've heard through the grapevine that the NFPA or whoever the powers that be are going to want you to have fresh bunker gear after each fire that you make. Do you know when or if that's going to start?
The bunker gear is actually going to be within the fire department's budget.
Yeah.
So
For extra bunker gear?
we had budgeted this year for extra bunker gear. They submitted their request. I'm
Oh,
assuming they
it was in
had-
this year's budget? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that
Yeah, we
they
bought-
had
we
additional
bought
bunker
10%.
gear for next fiscal year included in that request. And they also got a grant. So,
Oh, okay, it's taken care of. That's-
so we should be covered in their fire department budget.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As the mayor said, the salary adjustments that we're proposing are the 5%. Again, he broke it out into the 1.8, which is cost of living. This is small for the public to see, I apologize, but in your packet, it should be a little bit bigger. Basically, we go by the CPI average for the South from April through April. It's 1.8%, and so we just mirrored that cost of living adjustment. We also added in 1.2 for merit, which is total of 3% citywide. And then we added the additional 2% adjustment in order to hopefully make position starting salaries more competitive in the salary marketplace. Basically, the idea is we're increasing the salaries of every existing employee, or not every, but we're increasing existing employee salaries in the hopes that then when we bring somebody new on board, we can actually start them at a pay that's similar within the marketplace. We're not starting them because everybody else has been raised. Does that make sense?
Rick, I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
It may not be the right time, but the whole briefing we had, the TML briefing on the retirement benefits and trying to increase where we were at on that, has that been encompassed into the budget?
You're referring to the TMRS adjustments that we did last year? Yes, all of that is incorporated into the TMRS calculations for this year.
Thank you.
But, excuse me, we're not increasing the employee contribution.
We are not proposing any adjustments in the TMRS this year.
Okay.
Last year was an ad hoc, a one-time adjustment for updated service credits.
Right.
We did that. It did impact our our percentage last year, but it's also calculated in the percentage that we use to calculate salaries for this year. Tab F, page 38, goes through the benefit package that is included. We're proposing the same benefits package that we had this current fiscal year for next fiscal year. The only difference or the major hiccup here was the city's current health insurance provider is Blue Cross Blue Shield. When they re-rated us, they wanted to go up approximately 16% year over year. When we shopped that, United Healthcare provided comparable plans to what we have through Blue Cross Blue Shield right now at a significantly lower increase in cost over current year. So we're looking at a 6.55% increase year over year rather than a 16%. The dental is increased at 4.99%. There is no change in vision, and there will be no change in life, automatic death and dismemberment, short-term and long-term disabilities.
Although death is automatic, we know that at some point, that's actually accidental death.
Okay, accidental, sorry.
What did he say?
Automatic.
Automatic death. I thought we should clarify that.
Did I,
You said automatic death.
It
I-
says
you didn't say
automatic
that,
on
Rick.
the-
Yeah, he did.
It says automatic on there.
I'm just giving you a hard time. Go ahead, you're doing a great job.
yep,
Accidental.
It's actually standard, does cause it
Now
automatic.
that your mind is blown, go ahead.
Okay, these costs for dental and vision, not life, because that's a rate guarantee through standard, but dental and vision, those costs might actually even go down further, when we negotiate further with United Healthcare. So those can be an additional cost savings going forward in the budget process.
See, I told you all this was going to be fun, right, Rick? It's fun. Okay.
Rick, can I ask you another question, please?
Yes.
Limited to 5. You're
Limited to 5?
questions.
What am I at? I'm at 1 now. Okay.
Actually, you're at 6, but go ahead.
About this, the TMRS retirement, that's at 6%, we could go up 1% more, right? I mean, that's the limit.
They offer 5, 6, and 7% contribution levels, yes.
Okay. If we did implement that, how much would it cost the city? Do you have a ballpark, or could you get that to us?
I did not look into that. We would have to request that from
As I
TMRS.
recall, we had this discussion last year, and most of the employees were satisfied with 6, because going up an extra
That's-
percent takes it out of their pocket,
No, I
too.
understand that, but that's, you talk, some of them are for it. So, I mean, is there any way we can find out before
I can
the,
certainly find that out,
Okay.
and we can present that at the next,
okay,
next
okay.
budget.
I
but-
appreciate
or
it.
Next budget meeting, but as
If
far as.
it's not
what-
too much trouble.
No, it's fine. Okay, looking at, then going into the actual general fund budget. So you're under tab G, pages 40 and 41 here. The beginning fund balance that we are showing at the end of this fiscal year is gonna be 1.9 million. The fund balance at the end of next fiscal year, assuming that this 150,000 stays in play, would go up to 2.1 million. Total revenues are at 8.3 or 8.4 million, total expenditures 8.2, and again, there's that $150,000 difference. Looking at general fund revenues here, you can see that for next year, the ad valorem taxes should be at 38% of total revenues within the general fund. Non-property taxes, which are predominantly sales and use taxes, you're at 35%, so there's only a 3% difference there, which is quite good. Looking at the general fund expenditures here, council and administration, I lumped those together because council frankly is such a small portion of the entire budget. But the administration component is about 29%. The police, and I'm only going through the large chunks, the police is at 21%, and the fire and EMS together is at 21%. So there's some parity there. The reason that the admin department has significantly more expenditures than police and fire are because workers' comp, a lot of the lump sum payments for the entire city are taken out of the administration budget. You've got workers' comp at 67,000. You have all the insurance coverages for the city at 125,000. All the vehicle payments you'll see for the city, citywide are now included under the administrative budget. So that's why that there's a difference there. Okay, now I'm gonna go through each page of the general fund, hitting the highlights. You can see the ad valorem that we're proposing here. This, by the way, generally speaking, this is the current budget year. This is the year-to-date actual column. This is what we're projecting at the year end, and then this is the proposed, budget for next fiscal year. Then you have some note sections there if you'd like to make notes. But ad valorem, this year, we're expecting at year end to be at 2.8 million. The proposed budget is at 3.13 million. Again, that does include the 0.25% decrease in the tax rate. Sales and use tax, you can see that this year we projected, or we actually just did a budget amendment if you recall, but we're at 2.6 or $2.8 million. At year end, we're looking at 2.9, so almost $3 million. And so we've merely carried that over to next year in order to be conservative and not artificially inflate the revenues that we received, that we're going to receive for next year. That's pretty standard throughout this. You'll notice that a lot of these numbers are either annualized or I know exactly how much we know exactly how much we're going to spend or bring in at the end of the fiscal year. So you'll notice that projected year end, a lot of these numbers are then taken over into the next fiscal year unless there's something unusual, or that we know is going on. If there is, we're gonna highlight it for you tonight. Next page of the revenues. Can you at least turn on this light? I'm having a hard time seeing over here. That's better. Thank you. Court fines and fees. You'll notice that the current budget had about 657,000. We're going down to projected year end of 600,000, and we've carried that over. That's decrease is due to the decline in the issuance of tickets or in tickets, and so those tickets then go to municipal court to get prosecuted. If there's less tickets, there's less revenue for the city. Going into transfers in and transfers out, this year we're not proposing any transfers in of revenue from other, and that's typically from other funds that we have. EMS service fees. Current budget is at 147. We're looking at 132 by the end of this year. So there was a decrease there, and I believe there's been a decrease or somewhat of a decline in the number of runs that we're having at current. And then lastly, impound fees. Impound fees, we budgeted about 48. We're about 33. And again, it's similar to the issuance of tickets. We have had a decrease in the number of impounds at the city.
Susan, go ahead and hit that middle switch and turn these on. Okay, thanks.
Y'all can still see this just?
Yeah.
Okay. Going to city council, the only thing notable here is the uniform allowance went from 900 to 1,800. Again, that's going from $150 to $300 per council person. The total proposed budget expenditures are $4,881 for next fiscal year. Next page under administration. As I was talking about before, workers' comp, you can see that this is citywide lump sum. That's actually gone down about $1,000 or $2,000 for next fiscal year. The other thing I wanted to notice is, or talk to you about, is the uniform allowance here. You'll see a lot of these that are in administrative departments now. They were zeros, and then we've added in, again, that uniform allowance of $150 per employee that isn't currently getting a uniform allowance. And so that's a new addition in a lot of these budgets. And that's citywide, by the way. So what I mean by that is if you're an administrative assistant in the police department, that also applies to you. It's basically all other administrative employees. 380 agreement expenses. The citywide, other than in the EDC fund, this is where we pay out all the Chapter 380 economic development agreements. Again, we just did a budget adjustment to increase this because sales tax collections increased significantly. And so at year end, we're looking at about $1.13 million in payouts in economic development incentives. And we've moved that over to the next fiscal year because we see no reason why it shouldn't be a similar payout for the next fiscal year as well. Lastly, in the administrative fund, you've got transfer out to capital fund. Okay, so in the past, we had vehicle expenditures in the public works budget, in the police, fire, and EMS budgets. For me personally, when I process those payments, it's a pain. So I lumped all of them together and put them into the administrative budget for payments for next fiscal year. So that's $237,000. That incorporates the existing Ford Motor Credit payments that we have for the police department and public works. It also includes the fire truck and the ambulance that we just financed and that went into the fire department. It does include a new F-250 for the Public Works Department, a new F-250 for the Animal Control and Code Enforcement Department with a kennel unit on the back of that vehicle. It also includes a new Expedition or something comparable, which would be a general purpose vehicle for all city departments. We don't have a runaround vehicle for all city departments. So if somebody wants to go someplace, they have to use their own vehicle and we have to reimburse them for mileage. And so this would purchase a general purpose vehicle that wouldn't be used out in the field. It'd be used for running to conferences and things of that sort. And lastly, this does include the purchase of 3 new police department interceptors. for the police department. Insurance, because some of the claims that we have had, as y'all are aware of, year-to-date, we've spent $110,000 on insurance through 2TML. They did increase that rate to $125,500 for next fiscal year, and I'm assuming that has to be increased due to the claims that we've had. Dispatch. The communication equipment line item here, the Harris radio agreement line item, and the Fleetmatics GPS line item. You'll notice that those are actually throughout several of the department budgets, and that's because the AT&T mobility bill that we have is broken up by department. The Harris radio agreement, if the department uses portable or mobile radios, there's a maintenance agreement, and so I've broken that cost up amongst the various departments. And if those departments have vehicles that are monitored by GPS, I've broken that up as well. So that was in the last budget that we had, or this current budget that we had. Under dispatch technology and equipment, what is lumped in there, the dispatch department requested a laptop computer that could be taken home, that could also then VPN into the emergency services infrastructure that they have in dispatch, and so we've allowed for that. And we've also allowed for LED status indicators. Basically, they're fancy lights that just tell you when they're on the radio, so that the idea is you don't talk to them. So that's been included in the budget as well. City Secretary, there is nothing notable within the City Secretary's budget. Everything is status quo from this fiscal year. The same thing goes with municipal court. You'll see that municipal court actually did request some stuff within their department request. That's not included in the general fund. That's included in the municipal court technology and security funds, and I'll go over those in a few minutes. Human resources, it's generally status quo. They did request $800 for an employee recognition program that they would like to put into place, and so that is included in here. Development services, status quo, nothing has changed. Animal control and public works. Animal control, you'll see in their budget request, for this line item, they did request about $1,000 for artificial turf for the outdoor kennels that we have. Currently, those kennels sit on base material, and it wasn't a ding, but one of the comments that DSHS, the Department of State Health Services, had when they did our audit was that we could improve the kennels, the outdoor kennels, and make them more comfortable for the dogs. And so that artificial turf is put in there for those outdoor kennels. The other notable thing is under vehicles and equipment. You can see that line item went up to $57,000. That went not for the purchase of a vehicle. We already have an F-450 chassis that we received from the EMS department when they received their new Medic 1 unit. That was transferred over to the Public Works Department, and right now it's essentially a cab, and it has the frame behind it. It doesn't have a truck bed. And so what we're proposing here is to purchase a service body with a boom and bucket, which is essentially a cherry picker or a lift. At least I call it a cherry picker, and that dollar amount is $42,000. Right there. They're also requesting a push mower, a backpack blower, a sludge pump, some additional traffic control barricades, and a pole pruner and a chainsaw. We've included that in the $57,000 that is allotted for them. Buildings and grounds. Of note, you'll see a drastic difference right here with building maintenance. We budgeted, or actually at the year, we budgeted about $256,000 to $260,000 for building maintenance. We've dropped that to $100,000 for next fiscal year. That's because this fiscal year, we paid the remaining portion of the fire department HVAC retrofit and all of the police department HVAC retrofit. And so we've dropped that a considerable amount. We've also done quite a bit of other HVAC work, which tends to be the most expensive building maintenance that we have. And so I feel comfortable in the $100,000 figure. It actually matches what we were utilizing in 2015, 2016, and 2016, 2017. Miscellaneous expenses here, those have increased to 25,000. I may need to adjust that going forward because again, the mayor was referring to the police department carport bid and also the fencing bid that came in. So I haven't seen the fencing bid that's come in yet, but that 25,000 would be used for the police department carport and fencing project that we have, or that we're proposing. Parks and Recreation that we have here at 160,000, that's actually less than 2% of the budget. It's at 1.91% of the budget, and so we feel that is a comfortable percentage in order to allocate for Parks and Recreation going forward. Police Department. Of note within the Police Department is 35,000. Where am I? 35,617 for technology and equipment. That they're, as usual, they are replacing their portable radios on an annual basis. This year they replaced 4. This proposes that they replace 4 for the next fiscal year, and so that money is incorporated into the 35,000. You'll also see that ammunition has increased. They requested $2,500 for ammunition, so we included that. And we included their request for bulletproof vest funding. That doesn't sound like a lot, the $31.75, but that's actually the amount that we need to pay the grant that they receive annually. And so that's been included in here.
And do we have 100% wearing vests? Everyone has a vest?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody has been allocated in vest. Now, whether they're wearing it or
Well,
I don't know. but-
understood.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. Schools and seminars, they also requested 16,500 for schools and seminars. That is not included in the police department training fund budget, and I'll go over that in a little bit. That 16,500 is actually comparable to what the fire and EMS have, and so I didn't have any real heartburn increasing that to 16,500, even though they have a police department training budget. And lastly, under vehicle purchases, you'll notice that in a lot of these, it looks like a drastic decrease. It's 0. Well, that's because I've moved those amounts into the administrative budget. Fire department. One of the things that you'll know here, because I know I'm going to get questions on it, so I might as well address it, is the current budget, we have $984,000 in salary expenses. At year end, we'll be very close at $986,000. You'll see that increased quite a bit for next fiscal year, but you'll also see conversely in the EMS budget that it's decreased by about the same dollar amount, and that's because the way that they have allocated their employees, there are more fire employees than there are EMS employees now, and so that's just a mere reallocation. It doesn't mean that I'm dropping their budgets or that we're dropping their budgets a considerable amount. Equipment, another thing of note is the $39,000 for equipment purchase and maintenance. The fire department has not in the past done an annual purchase or replacement of portable radios. The fire chief wants to start doing that. And so we've allowed $17,575 in here for 5 radios. The fire department radios are more expensive than the police department radios because they have to be intrinsically safe, which is a water fire issue or rating. And so that money has been allocated there. And then again, transfer to capital fund, was for vehicles in the past, that's 0, it went to admin. EMS. Touching on it again, salaries this year were about $40,000. You can see they went down to $310,000. Again, that's the reallocation of employees between the fire and EMS departments. It doesn't mean that we're lowering the number of employees within that department. Schools and seminars, here at 1627, they did request that we allow $10 per person for all CPR, to have all employees CPR and AED trained. And so we've allowed that in their budget as well. And lastly, under equipment purchase and maintenance here at $18,851. They did request a it's called a Clorox 360 disinfecting machine. What it does is uses not vapor, but more like a fog to clean through a Clorox solution the insides of the ambulance units. It is safe with electronics, which there's a lot of electronics in ambulances. But not only can we use it in the ambulances, we can use it citywide during those times of year when everybody seems to be getting sick. They can actually go through the various buildings and disinfect all of the buildings in an effort to try to prevent people from getting sick with the flu or something along those lines. And again, the transfer out to capital fund went down to zero. Again, it was transferred to the admin budget. So looking here, you can see the total expenditures for the current fiscal year are about $8 million. That's going up around $200,000 to $8.2 million for this next fiscal year. Current budget, of course, is a balanced budget. The net is zero. Year to date, we're at about $43,000 ahead. By the projected year end, we'll probably be down to zero. And for next fiscal year, there's that $150,000 number again. Okay, debt service. Debt service is in tab H, so it's the next tab over. One of the things I want to note here is, before I get to questions, is on EDC debt service. If you recall, the EDC, well, they have debt service. They pay the city's debt service fund, and the city pays the entire debt service amount for the 2007 and the 2015 C of O issuances. You'll see here that this year we budgeted $323,000. It looks like they haven't paid us all the money that's due to us. They actually have. The issue that we were having is we had a surplus of funds in the debt service fund, and it didn't look like we were collecting the amount of ad valorem tax revenue that we needed to on the general fund. And so state law prohibits us from transferring interest and sinking money, actual ad valorem taxes that we receive for that, to the general fund, okay? Because one's for INS and one's for NO. But state law doesn't prohibit us transferring the difference out of the EDC's money that they pay us. And so that's why that looks weird, but they have paid us the full amount. Talking about the litigation expenses, you can see litigation expenses went down by about $57,000 from this current fiscal year to next fiscal year. The Texas Association of Builders issue has been paid in full. We do have 2 more payments to Continental Homes, and we have 2 more payments to Ashton Woods. So within 2 fiscal years, we'll be done with the litigation expenses. Capital replacement. Within the capital replacement fund, we're starting out next fiscal year at about $723,000 in the capital replacement fund. Those are monies that are left over from the 2015 certificates of obligation. We've spent all of the 2007 certificates of obligation. So that's where we're starting out in the fund for next fiscal year. You'll see this admin miscellaneous revenues. Basically, that's the transfer from the administration department to the capital replacement fund for all the vehicles. So we're paying all the vehicles out of the capital replacement fund. By the end of this fiscal year, the amount of C of O money that the EDC has to pay for the pedestrian bridge in Old Town should be exhausted, and so they will have no capital money anymore at the end of this fiscal year, which is why you'll see EDC purchases are zeroed out. Of course, we have $237,000 in vehicles. The fire department and the police department do have some capital monies that they set aside. They weren't from certificates of obligation issuances. They were from money that they received through grant funds or something in the past that we put into the capital replacement fund just as a placeholder for that money. So there are that. What's remaining out of the 2015 C of Os for next year will likely be $686,000. A portion of that, we do plan on constructing the disc golf course and fitness park restroom facility at that, out of that C of O funds, but there still will be remaining dollars in the 2015 certificate of obligation issuance. When I go through these funds, other than the general fund, you'll notice that the debt service fund and all the others, I'm drawing them down like I do every year to zero. Basically, we're bringing in all the money, and we're budgeting to spend not only the existing fund balance that's there, but also the revenues that we have brought in by expending them out. And so everything's drawn down to zero. That doesn't mean, and it never happens, that we actually draw everything down to zero every year. It just frankly makes me happy because it looks good in my opinion.
Hey, Rick?
Uh-huh.
Under these vehicle purchases, are any of these units leases?
They are all leases.
They're all leases?
They're all leases, with the exception of the kennel facility that would be purchased for the animal control department.
Technically, it's not described as a lease.
Lease purchase.
Through Ford Motor Credit. What happens is we typically take it out for 4 years, making annual payments, and at the end of 4 years, however many vehicles we buy in a lump for each purchase, we can buy those vehicles for $1, and they assign the titles to us.
Okay.
So it's a lease to buy. I mean, so in a sense, we're financing the vehicles.
Yeah.
Lease to buy.
Next fund is the municipal court security and technology funds. Within the security fund, as I said, the municipal court, they did request some additional bailiff and warrant officer equipment, portable radios, stun guns, things of that sort, and so that is included in this budget allocation at $5,600. Again, we're drawing this fund down to zero. Municipal court technology, which is the next fund. Municipal court did request that we allocate a certain portion of this $23,000 that we have budgeted there to fingerprinting equipment and software. That fingerprinting equipment and software is actually more along the lines between $4,000 and $5,000, so it'll come out of that $23,000. Basically what this is the state of Texas, well, actually, DPS, the FBI, they're requiring us to fingerprint anybody who has been involved in a family violence situation. We have to store those fingerprints, and then if they're convicted in municipal court for that offense, then we have to transfer those fingerprints to the state, to DPS, I believe. And so that's a new requirement out of this last legislative session, and that's why we're trying to allocate for it here. PEG. PEG, again, is the Public Access Fund. It's what we used for the cameras, for the speaker system, for anything that gets relayed over the television set, essentially. This historically has been, I probably shouldn't say this, but it's been historically hard to spend all the money that we get through the PEG funds. And so it is the same this fiscal year. You'll notice that in the projected year end, the projected year end at $45,000 is higher than the $23,000 that we've spent to date. We're currently getting bids on improving the video conferencing ability within this council chambers, so that the Open Meetings Act allows a council person to be in a different part of the country, and as long as you video conference them in the correct way. We don't have that ability right now. We don't have the ability to have somebody who's a consultant or somebody else address council outside of this venue, and so we'd like to have that ability. That is one of the things that we're looking at for this fiscal year in the way of an expenditure. The next fund is PD training. PD training, we're proposing a expenditures of $6,166. That's in addition to the $16,500 that we budgeted in the general fund. This, however, has restrictions on it. So this money can only be used for actual training, like paying an instructor, paying for a class. You can't use this money to pay for somebody's per diem or travel or any of that stuff to get to the training facility. And so this money would be used for the program that we've created with ACOG at hosting classes here at City Hall for the police department. The $16,500 would be used for training and per diem and travel expenses related to training outside of this facility. School safety. School safety, we're budgeting for next fiscal year, other expenditures about $20,000. You'll notice that this year, by the projected year end, we're at $39,380. We have an issue on Leslie Road in O'Connor. The light needs quite a bit of repair because the vehicle sensing equipment that's there is not operating correctly. And so we anticipate a pretty large expenditure by the end of this fiscal year out of that line item, which of course brought the amount that we could use out of that fund for next year for school safety purposes down. But again, that budget goes down to zero just on a budget purpose, or just for budget purposes. State forfeiture fund, there's nothing of note in the state forfeiture fund. That's monies that the,
Rick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Getting back to that Leslie and O'Connor Drive, Northside doesn't have to chip in on that?
that is not equipment that's owned by Northside. That's our light, our street.
Even though, okay. All right, thank you.
Nothing of note in the state forfeiture fund. Street maintenance. So the beginning fund balance that we're projecting for next year is $174,000. That's at the end of this fiscal year for next year. We're estimating revenues at $734,000 for street maintenance next fiscal year. You'll see that as of today, we've spent about $506,000 in street maintenance expenditures. The vast majority of this was to pay for the street maintenance for the 2018 street maintenance program. Basically, they didn't submit bills until after October 1 of this fiscal year. So, but nonetheless, when we include Lone Star Paving and Clark Construction of Texas, which are the current contracts that we just recently executed for the 2019 street improvement program, which consists of one-course surface treatments, mill and overlay, and mastic surface treatments. We're at the end of this fiscal year, we're looking at $1.1 million in expenditures on street maintenance. Next year, we're budgeting $907,000 for street maintenance work. So, again, it's quite significant to have $1 million in street maintenance money available to us when we only had at most maybe $50,000 in street maintenance money in the past. So it is a considerable improvement. Hotel occupancy tax. So this used to be sort of a non-issue because we don't have a hotel in Helotes, right? Our beginning fund balance is at $6,900. That money's actually been received from short-term rental units. Short-term rental units are anything less than 30 days where people rent out their house or they rent out a room in their house through Airbnb or VRBO, HomeAway, all of these different sites, right? So the revenues that we're projecting for next year right now are $7,544. That most likely, however, is low due to the fact that the city just hired Host Compliance. Host Compliance monitors short-term rentals and basically scours the internet and takes screenshots of Airbnb, VRBO, all of these, so we know who has a short-term rental, we know how much, when they've rented that short-term rental, we know how much they rented that short-term rental for, and so we've essentially caught them, and we can then enforce our hot tax on them. Just so you know, this is a screenshot of all the short-term rentals that we have in the city limits and in our ETJ. There's 117 listings for short-term rentals, which means that there's 117 listings on Airbnb, VRBO, all of those. Some of them are duplicates, obviously. There's 88 rental units that have been short-term rentals. And there's 42, this is the, 47, this is 47 dots that are advertised as short-term rentals and are active short-term rentals. So there should be a considerable increase in revenue under our hot tax fund.
Rick?
Yes.
You mean we can collect hotel occupancy tax in our ETJ?
Yes.
We can?
Yeah, as long as you're a city under
The
35,000.
legislature hadn't come up with a way to stop that one yet, huh?
No, as long as you're a city under the population of 35,000, you can collect
Really?
it in our ETJ. Yeah, and that's in our code of ordinances as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. We can't do building permits fees, but we can get that.
Yeah, we've always had that.
Well, we always had that before.
May I ask a question
Sure.
about this compliance and it says non-compliant with land use regulations, unknown compliance, not yet identified. Okay. When you say non-compliant, what, I know what the word means. How do you know?
Okay,
if
so
a-
some cities, on short-term rentals, some cities require that they get a permit. Okay, that's gonna be considered a land use regulation. So they have to be a permitted short-term rental unit in order to operate, right? The city of Helotes doesn't require a permit to operate as a short-term rental. What we do require is that they remit on a quarterly basis the hot tax that's owed to the city of Helotes. So some cities, again, this is a website that this host compliance works for the city of San Antonio, they work for Arlington, they work for some pretty big cities in Texas, but they are nationwide. So this is a universal platform, right? So their term is non-compliant with land use regulations. That means that they're non-compliant because they don't have a permit to operate in other cities. It doesn't apply to us.
I see.
All I care about is or all we should care about is these dots turning green, meaning that they're compliant and they're remitting the hot tax to us. The other thing that, since this fund is actually will most likely start drawing some additional revenue, is I just wanted to reiterate what you can use that revenue for. Again, the stuff in red is the stuff that I think is sort of the key words here. You can use it only to promote tourism and the convention and hotel industry, and that consists of convention center facilities or visitor information centers, constructing them, operating them, all of those things. You can use it to furnish facilities, personnel, materials for convention delegates or registrants. Obviously, we don't have a convention center here, so that's probably unlikely at this time. You can use it for advertising and promotional programs to attract tourists. You can use it for the encouragement, promotion, improvement, and application of the arts. Basically, instrumental and vocal music, folk art, anything dealing with the art, you can fund through the hotel occupancy tax. You can also do it for historical restoration and preservation projects, promotional expenses for sporting events, enhancements to sporting events, sporting facilities or fields, and signage directing the public to sites and attractions within the community. So a lot of these things actually apply to us that we do already.
We could use the money to build the restrooms at the park. It's a sporting facility.
Yeah, probably so. I mean, I think this is new to us, so I think we need to make sure that we're correct on a lot of these assumptions. But a lot of these key words here directly apply to a lot of the activities that we do on a day-to-day basis. And so I think the hotel occupancy tax fund through short-term rentals will become a more predominant part of our fund budgets throughout the year. That's all, that's my point.
Rick?
Yes.
Quick question on that. Where you have neighborhood CCNRs that prohibit such activities, is there any database that cross-references those? Or
No.
we're
No.
leaving it up to the community?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we would leave that up to the HOA to regulate that themselves. Essentially, the way, the city's standpoint on this is that if you can rent your home, period, you can rent it for less than 30 days, or you can rent it for 2 years. Our code of ordinances makes no distinction between the two. Municipal fee schedule. So tab P, page 62. Every year, we update the municipal fee schedule for the cost of living adjustment. And so what we've done to all the fees that are included within your fee schedule, with the exception of building permits, which we just actually changed the entire structure of, and plan review fees, we added 1.8% and we rounded to the nearest dime. So that's where those numbers are coming from. That does not apply, however, in the later section of the fee schedule. See all the municipal court fines and fees. A lot of those are state regulated, and so it wouldn't apply to those. And lastly, included within your packet, and this has not been presented to the EDC yet, but I did want to include it in y'all's packet as what we're going to propose next week to the EDC, is the EDC fund. Right now, we're proposing a starting fund balance of 1.3 million. Their revenues, it looks like right now, are going to be close to 1.5 million. And the expenditures that we have, many of which are sort of customary expenditures, are at 1.2 million. So every year, they're bringing in more money than they're expending, which is, of course, not a bad thing. But their general fund balance is increasing by between $300,000 and $400,000 every year. So I just wanted to make y'all aware of that.
Is there a limit on that the EDC can,
No,
a percentage or anything like that they can go up to?
no,
Okay, so they don't have to spend the money?
no, they don't have to spend the money. I'm just
Okay, I'm
saying
just
that
asking.
there is money there available to spend, though.
Okay.
But they should spend the money. It's not there for them not to
Well, don't
spend
spend
it.
unless you need to.
We're going to be suggesting some projects.
That's good.
The other thing related to the EDC budget is you'll see, I tried, in my proposal, I don't know if this is going to work, and I don't know if y'all will like it when it comes to y'all either, but I'm trying to tie some of their expenditures to the work plan, obviously, that was approved by the EDC and the city council just recently. So there's a variety of projects in there that, like the tourism center, the Gateway Monument signage, all of that. So I've adjusted these labels to match what is included as an activity within their work plan. So we have MDD creation, municipal development, district creation, as a part of their work plan. I have it under legal fees, because a lot of that stuff likely will be legal fees if we decide to proceed in doing anything with an MDD. I've also, under marketing, it used to just be marketing, I've now added tourism, because the strategic work plan says that one of the things that they're supposed to be working on is increasing tourism within the city, predominantly through tourism. And then the other ones are down here, capacity and gap analyses. You notice that in the work plan, they have, it calls to do capacity analysis predominantly for Class A office space in order for us to figure out where we are in what we have versus what we can have in Class A office space, and that's a capacity and gap analysis. I've added in visitor center and I've added in gateway signage and allocated completely arbitrary numbers at this point, just as placeholders for the EDC to discuss. Lastly, of note in the EDC budget is they continue to have their managed services agreement funds in there for next fiscal year, which is the money they pay to the city for the financial services and all the other oversight that we do for the EDC. And the debt service here, debt service for next fiscal year is about $330,000 that they will pay our debt service fund in order for us to pay those liabilities. The only other thing I'll note here is retail recruitment consultant. We used to budget for that because we had a contract. The EDC decided that it no longer wanted to pursue using a consultant for retail recruitment, predominantly because there was no way really to tie any developments or retail that came into the city with what that retail consultant actually did. And so they canceled, well, actually, they just let the contract terminate, and that's why it's down to zero, because we don't anticipate continuing with that contract. That's it.
I don't see anything in the budget proposal about continuing to go after the VIA.
That was the MDD deal, the legal for the MDD.
That's related to the municipal
Is
development.
that taking an aggressive stance, or is that just still wait and see?
At this point, we're at a place where, through our findings, I think what needs to happen is the Bear County Commissioners Court we have to convince them to call an election specifically for our ETJ. So that's where we are.
Okay.
I don't know if they would support that or not. I'm hesitant to say they would, but that's where we are.
Anything else from anybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody? Go ahead. Yeah, Rick, Mr. Mayor, thank you. As has been mentioned, I just didn't want to do it to interrupt in the process, but last year I was a proponent of considering strongly the increase in the 6 to 7% for the TMRS contribution part. And I'd like to see some numbers about that brought back so that we can resume that conversation. I may get shot down again, but I'm still willing to try. So if I know it may not be much different than what we saw last year. I mean, I'm sure there's some inflationary part of it, but, you know, the concerns last year brought up were the fact that we hadn't been raising pay very much, and that to require the employees to take 1% more out of their check to put it into their retirement fund, even though the city matches that 2-for-1, that was harsh. But with a 5% pay raise and with extra room in the budget, I think it's something that we should consider again, just to look at the numbers.
Okay.
Bert?
Okay. I agree with Councilmember Blue on that. Since the fire chief is here, I mean, run it by your guys and see what they think, and just let me know how they feel about it. I mean, I think the employees should be the ones that, you know, are part of the decision-making process on that. Also, I'd like to really commend you guys on wanting to give our employees a well-deserved raise of 3.2 over the CPI. That is incredible. That is really awesome, and they deserve every bit of it. The only thing I have a question about is the mayor's suggestion to lower the
Ad
property, the ad valorem tax to 3.345. And I think you told me earlier it was like we were going to lose $40,000 over the whole run. Is that correct? Yeah. Well, as we're all well aware, the state legislature every year has been going after cities. They didn't get the small cities this time. They did get all the cities that are above population of 30,000 or more. But I feel like they're coming after the smaller cities in their next session. So, well, where this wouldn't affect us that much, I'm just still in the back of my mind, I'm worried about our legislature taking our ability to do what we have to do for our citizens of this great city. So I don't know if I'm really for lowering the ad valorem tax, that 0.5%. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Cynthia?
I'm absolutely for lowering it. We just fit the budget to, is what, you said it was 40,000 that we would?
A little lower, it's about 23,000 per quarter percent, so it's about 46,000.
Well, with all of the new businesses coming into town.
Yes.
And all of the new properties, that substantially raises our property, the money that's coming in. And so I think that this is a good start for our citizens. So I'm definitely for it.
Well, and if I may, I'd just like to say that, you know, we don't make these recommendations lightly. I've been involved in going to workshops and following what's been going on in the legislature. And, you know, I have concerns too about what what the legislatures in the future are going to be doing to be negatively influencing municipalities. However, as Cynthia said, and I said earlier in my budget message, with the increase in residential units that are going to be constructed over the next 3 to 5 years and the new businesses coming in, like this one you all just approved the conceptual plan on tonight, we feel that the revenue is going to be there, a good, strong increase in the revenue. And a half cent does not really impact each property owner that much, but to me, we've been stable for 6 years, and as I said, that was intentionally, I never recommended going below that because of the concerns that Councilmember Byes brought up, but also to be sure that we have an upward trend in our property tax revenue and our other revenues. And since that's been well established, and we're seeing something we've never seen before, and that's a surplus going into the budget, I felt like as a good faith gesture to lower it a 0.5%, because it really doesn't impact our general fund a whole lot. And it does show a willingness for us, since our general fund balance is going up each year, that we are, well, to put it quite bluntly, we're confiscating a little less money from our property owners, our residents, than we typically have over the last 6 years. For instance, on a $300,000 home, it's only going to be saving the homeowner about $15 a year, which isn't significant. A $450,000 home will be about $22.50. So it's a small gesture, but if you recall, back in 2011, 12, and 13, we dropped a 0.5 cent each year for those 3 years. So this is, to me, well-deserved by our property owners, and that's why I made the recommendation. Of course, it's up to y'all to decide ultimately whether to go along with that recommendation or not, but I feel comfortable in making it. And historically, as I said, we've been very conservative in our recommendations and our projections, and I feel like the legislature is going to continue doing what they've been doing, but I don't know that they're going to come back and attack property taxes right away. And I really feel like they're going to see that they've made some mistakes in this last session, and they'll probably correct some of those. And I don't know that they'll really go after small cities as aggressively as they have in the large cities. But anyway, that's just my opinion, and hopefully that helps a little bit. Okay, Rick, good job. Anything else? Any questions? No, sir. Okay, then our next item is item number 12, and this just is discussion of an action on placing a proposal to adopt an ad valorem tax rate for tax year 2019 on the September 26th, 2019 regular meeting agenda of the City Council of the City of Helotes, Texas. And this is basically, as we've done every year, just deciding a maximum, knowing full well you can go below that. If you agree, as you have in the years past with a recommendation we've made to you tonight, you can place that ad valorem tax rate at the 34.5 cent level per $100 valuation, or you can go and stay with the 35 cent per 100 and then have that leeway to stay there or to drop it at our meeting in September on the 26th. So with that, I would look for a motion and a second to discuss and take action on placing the proposal to adopt the ad valorem tax rate for next year, for this year.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we discuss and take action on item 12 as written.
Have a motion from Massey. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Byes. Cynthia, you're up.
I am going to propose that we adopt the mayor's proposal of .341252. Is that the one?
No, it's 0.345. That's not on this sheet. but it is in your message. So it's 35 cents is what our 2018 tax rate is, and we're proposing for 2019, 0.345, which is a half cent lower.
Okay, well, that is my proposal for the tax rate.
Okay, so your motion is to approve the recommendation of dropping or decreasing the ad valorem tax rate a half a cent from 35 cents per $100 valuation to 34.5 cents per $100
Yes.
valuation. Okay, Bert?
I've done this every year for the past few years. I'd like to just see it at where it is right now, at the 0.35, and we can always lower it in September. That's my opinion.
Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur. I think we should go with the .35 for this particular motion. I believe that we need to set it at that level. We still have the option of lowering it at some future time. It also gives our missing council member an opportunity to be a part of that rather than making the decision in his absence solely. But I would, in addition, I would side with Councilmember Byes. I think that we should leave it as it is moving forward too. But certainly for tonight's motion, I think the .35 is where we should go, because we could still go one way or the other. If we set that at .345 tonight, then we don't have the option for further discussion and thought about that at future meetings. Thank you.
Jim?
I just have a question as to the agenda item. Are we setting the rate tonight, or just having the discussion and action on placing the proposal to adopt an ad valorem tax?
Correct.
Well-
But we have to name an amount.
I didn't hear that one.
You have to name an amount. That amount can be the proposed amount.
Okay.
Or any
That
other
was-
amount, but.
That was my question, is whether or not we had to set an
You
amount tonight.
you can go less than the amount set tonight, but you can't go over it. And as you see, the rollback rate is just over 35 cents per $100 valuation, so you really wouldn't be able to go much over that. So if you want to, right now, the motion is to set it tonight at 34.5 cents per $100 valuation, so there'd have to be an amendment to the motion to set it at 35 cents. We'll give Councilmember Massey an opportunity to amend it, and if she doesn't want to, then one of you can make a motion to amend, and then we'll take a vote on the amendment.
Okay, well, then with that clarification, my only comment is I hate to see it go two directions, is to lower something and then have to raise it back up. So I'd rather keep it at the .35 would be my own personal preference.
Okay? I don't see having to raise it unless that's just something you guys feel you need to, but that's your prerogative. Cynthia, you've heard the discussion. Any other discussion? Would you like to amend the motion?
No, I would not, and I would like to make the comment that our citizens are very well aware that we've kept it at .35 for the last several years, and yet their taxes continue to go up. They see that, and so, we have the good faith effort of doing that, but they see that the property taxes are going up and our business taxes are going up. So we're getting all these extra revenues and we're not giving them any breaks at all. Their taxes are still going up. And you say it's only $15, $17. Well, you know what? It's something, and we need to start there. And so no, I don't want to change it.
Okay, and that was the reason for my recommendation, was it's been there for 6 years, and in the grand scheme of things, $46,000 is a fairly nominal amount compared to just, doing it. And we took all of that into consideration. But again, she's against amending her motion, so if one of you want to amend it, we'll see if you get a second, and if you do, we'll take a vote on that amended motion, and if it passes, then that's just the way it is. So do we have anyone
Mr.
who
Mayor,
wants
I'd
to
like
amend it?
to make an amended motion for this agenda item to keep it at .35 for now.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Byes to amend the motion to set the rate tonight at 35 cents per $100 valuation. We have a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Blue. Bert, any discussion on your amendment?
I've already said what I wanted to say the
Okay.
last time.
Alex?
Yes, I would, and I do compliment Councilmember Massey for her consistent championing of the citizens, and I completely agree with that. My thought tonight is from a slightly different portion, and while I doubt that most of the citizens can't afford the $15 for a $300,000 house, that's not really the driving force. But every year, when we see the rollback rate change, we see it get closer and closer and closer to the amount that we actually are able to. And when you understand what the rollback rate means, it's not a matter of whether our rate is going up or not, but it's the amount of the tax that we collect. So as was mentioned earlier in this session, the anticipation that we're going to have another 300 to 400 houses be developed, that's going to cause our rate, our tax collecting dollar amount to increase. If Barrett County Appraisal District also increases the property valuation, it is very likely that next year we will see the rollback rate be actually lower than the amount we're charging. And rather than saying we're going to voluntarily do it, we're going to be forced into lowering the rate, which will then eventually have that effect on our tax rate and our ability to maintain our budget and the services that we provide to our citizens. Every year we've seen this, it's gone from, it was 35, it was a lot more than 35.03 last time. And it's been getting closer and closer. And if we lower it, we are going to be in a situation where we're not going to be able to raise it, and we may actually be forced into lowering it whether we like it or not. As the city grows in size and tax base, because it's not the rate that matters, it's the tax collected that matters according to that rollback rate. And that's what I'm saying, is that I think that to lower it is a nice gesture, but it might be a bit short-sighted, if especially given the potential annexation and development within the city and the valuation of all the property that you anticipated in your presentation and our city administrator, all of the extra ad valorem tax we're going to collect from the properties developed along Bandera Road. So I think that it's a nice gesture, but I think it's short-sighted in the sense that we're going to be putting ourselves 2 or 3 years from now in a bad position. Those are my comments about that. It's not the $15. It's the fact that I think we're going to be putting ourselves in a predicament.
Jim?
My only comment is just to basically repeat the fact that I hate to see short-sightedness make up for the long term, so I'd like to keep it at the .35.
Cynthia?
I'm sticking to my guns. I
Okay.
think you're wrong.
Okay, then we will, if there's no further discussion, Bert, you have anything else? If there's no further discussion, we'll call the question on the amended motion, which is to set the proposed rate for the ad valorem tax rate of tax year 2019 at 35 cents per $100 valuation. All in favor, say aye.
Mayor, that needs to be a recorded vote.
Oh, yeah, it's a record vote. I have that note here, I just wasn't paying attention. So it is a record vote, and we will start with Councilmember Meadows. Your vote?
I'm in favor of the amendment.
So your vote is a yes?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Bert? Cynthia?
No.
Okay. So we have 3 yes votes and 1 no vote, the no vote being Councilmember Massey. So the amended motion passes, and the tax rate is remaining for now 35 cents per $100 valuation. Okay, the last item is item number 13. This discussion of an action on setting public hearings on the proposed tax rate, 2019 ad valorem tax rate on the August 22nd, 2019 and September 12th, 2019 regular meeting agendas. So if I have a motion and a second to discuss and approve, discuss and take action on setting these public hearing dates, I'd like to have a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we have discussion on and take action on setting the public hearings.
Have a motion from Meadows. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Buys. Jim, any discussion?
None.
Bert?
Nope.
Cynthia?
No.
Alex?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay, no discussion being required. A yes vote will be to agree to these dates for the public hearings. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. And that finishes our agenda. If there are no objections, I will adjourn the meeting. No objections being heard. We're adjourned at 9:04.